Almost none of the internet crossing an ocean goes through a satellite. It travels through a cable about the width of a garden hose, lying on the seafloor. And in the last 2 years, someone has started cutting them on purpose. Right now, about 570 of these cables carry 95 to 99% of all intercontinental internet traffic. Every video call, every overseas email, almost none of it touches a satellite on the way. Pull one out of the water, and it's barely an inch thick. Inside, the actual glass fibers carrying your data are each about as thin as a single human hair, and some of them run under 4 kilometers of open ocean, deeper than the water pressure most submarines on Earth are ever rated to survive. It's not just that cables happen to exist. Satellites genuinely lose this fight. A signal to a geostationary satellite and back travels over 70,000 kilometers round trip, adding a noticeable lag to every call. Light through glass on the seafloor takes a fraction of that time at a fraction of the delay. This isn't even new. The first cable to cross an ocean went down in 1866, a telegraph line. We've been trusting the bottom of the sea with our long-distance messages for over 150 years. So how does a hair-thin strand of glass move more data than entire countries generate across thousands of miles without failing? Inside, it's just light. Your data becomes pulses of laser light, bounced down the fiber by total internal reflection. The light physically can't escape the glass at that angle, so it just keeps traveling. But light fades over distance. So every 50 to 100 kilometers, a repeater, a signal booster built right into the cable, amplifies it back up. A copper layer wrapped around the fiber carries the electricity to power every single one for thousands of miles in a row. One modern cable, laid by Microsoft and Meta across the Atlantic, moves 224 terabits every single second. Laying one isn't simple either. Near shore, a specialized ship plows the cable into a trench in the seabed, burying it out of reach of anchors and fishing nets. Out in the deep ocean, it's simply left exposed on the bottom. Nothing out there to snag it. Eventually it comes ashore at a landing station, often just an unassuming building on a beach. All of that global capacity runs through something you could genuinely trip over on your way to the water. And it isn't just telecom companies or governments footing the bill anymore. Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon now own or co-own a growing share of the newest cables outright. About 200 of these cables get damaged every single year, worldwide, roughly one, somewhere on Earth, every 2 days. The overwhelming majority, 80 to 86%, is boring. A fishing trawler's net, a ship dropping anchor in exactly the wrong spot. Finding the exact break is its own trick. Engineers fire a pulse of light down the fiber and time how long it takes to bounce back off the fault. Like sonar, but with light, pinpointing a break to within meters, across a cable thousands of miles long. Then the fix gets almost absurdly physical for something this high-tech. A repair ship drags a hook called a grapnel across the seafloor, blind, until it snags the actual cable and hauls it up to the surface. Technicians then splice the broken glass back together under a microscope. One single splice can take up to 16 hours, on fiber thinner than a hair. Best case, once a ship arrives, repair takes days. Worst case, weeks. One real outage took a full 2 months to fully restore, and once a ship arrives is doing a lot of work in that sentence. With so few repair ships on the planet, the nearest one is often days away to begin with, and may already be queued up behind someone else's break. Most of the time, you never even notice a cut happened because other cables quietly pick up the slack. That redundancy is the whole system's real safety net. But that safety net only works if enough ships exist to actually fix the damage. And here's the part that should worry you. There are fewer than 20 ships in the entire world whose job is fixing these cables, which is a real problem because lately, not every cut has been an accident. On November 17th, 2024, a Chinese cargo ship called the Peng 3 dragged its anchor for over 100 miles across the floor of the Baltic Sea, severing two separate cables along the way. Western officials suspected it wasn't an accident. They couldn't prove it. The ship's anchor just happened to be down for over 100 miles through exactly two cables. 5 weeks later, on Christmas Day, a tanker called the Eagle S did something almost identical, cutting 4 data cables and a power line running between Finland and Estonia. This time, Finland didn't just investigate. Special forces rappelled onto the tanker from a helicopter mid-voyage and seized the entire ship. The Eagle S turned out to be part of what investigators call the Shadow Fleet, aging tankers with deliberately obscured ownership used to move sanctioned Russian oil around the world while dodging Western sanctions. That obscurity is exactly what makes this so hard to stop. A ship can sail under a flag of convenience, ownership buried under shell companies, in international waters where jurisdiction itself is a legal gray zone. The anchor slipped is a genuinely difficult claim to disprove in court. By 2025, the Baltic alone had logged 11 of these incidents. Officials increasingly point to the same pattern: Shadow Fleet ships dragging anchors across exactly the cables that matter. It isn't just the Baltic. Near Taiwan, a Chinese-owned vessel was caught cutting a cable in January 2025. A second Taiwanese cable was cut the very next month. Taiwan's own Matsu Islands have had their cables cut more than 20 times in 5 years, with barely any redundant routes to fall back on. In 2023, one of those cuts left islanders without real internet for weeks. This already happened to actual people. None of this requires a hack, a virus, or a single line of malicious code. It just requires knowing where an ordinary-looking ship's anchor happens to be, at exactly the right coordinates. And that same trick works anywhere in the world these cables come close enough to the surface. The internet's entire physical form, crossing an ocean, comes down to glass the width of a hair, wrapped in something the width of a garden hose, watched over by fewer than 20 repair ships on the whole planet. For most of its history, the biggest threat to that system was a fishing boat that didn't know any better. Now, some of the ships dragging anchors already know exactly where to look.